Hi, my name is Phill, and this is the story of our last winter. People who know me are aware that I have been training and improving my resilience against cold temperatures over years now. Every fall and winter I push my limits and wear short pants or t-shirts as long as possible. And even when it's winter, I can usually be seen in a hoodie or pullover rather than a warmer jacket. It's a test for my mental and physical boundaries each year, but as we all know, the past 12 months haven't been easy for neither of us. When October 2020 came, I was torn between two feelings. I felt like I should play it light this year, maybe give my best to stay warm, not to catch a cold, etc., considering all the worries around COVID-19. But the more I thought about it, the second feeling grew stronger. I wanted to battle the cold, once again and even harder than the years before. I can't remember on what particular day I decided to do it, but one day I just felt the urge to go and take a bath in a nearby lake, even though the temperatures had already dropped below 10 degrees Celsius. I asked my good friend, namesake and brother Phill, who had just moved from Vienna to Berlin, if he would be eager to join me, and we just did it. I think it was on that same day actually that I came up with the idea to make a film about what we just did. Shortly afterwards, we agreed on taking ice baths at least once a week and that I would document each and every time we would go into the water, soaking up every bit of sunlight that was still left. As we continued to brave the cold and shared it with our best friends, more and more people were interested in what we did. And before we could even think about it, we were accompanied by some of the loveliest people I have ever met. In case someone disliked the experience at first because it was painful, they were like, "I'll be here again next time," afterwards, because it seemed like something deep inside of them triggered them to try it again. I was actually surprised that when we were separated and people had to leave because they were just visiting for a couple of days or weeks, some of them continued their practice, although they were alone. We even started a live stream at some point when Phill had to go home for Christmas, and while we were entering the lake, he was entering the ice-cold swimming pool in his dad's garden, which was a lot of fun. The more time passed, the more people joined our efforts, and although it sounds crazy, it almost felt like some kind of primal instinct for everybody who joined. People were joining and leaving, but as the new year began, it felt as if we really had established a core group of people who would go out each week to become one with the ice-cold water, no matter the weather. We became more than friends. We became a little family. It didn't matter anymore if it was raining, snowing, or just ice cold. We just met and had fun together. And as the first bit of snow had fallen, we just enjoyed ourselves by the water. We didn't follow any particular protocol, although we had tried meditating and certain breathing patterns at first. We were at a point where it felt best to just do it and concentrate on staying calm and on breathing accordingly as soon as we touched the water. Some of us would move their bodies with movements reminding of those shown by the famous Wim Hof to get some circulation going after the bath, but in most cases we just tried to get warm again as soon as possible, since every day got colder and colder. When you're taking ice baths for a couple of weeks, the body begins to adapt more or less to a certain extent, especially in regards to breathing and the respiratory system. The thing though is, as long as you're in the water, you haven't yet passed the toughest part, which begins when you leave the water again. If it hasn't begun yet, your whole body begins to shake, which is a natural response of the body trying to get warm again. Your limbs or even whole body parts may become numb and you might feel a dull, steadily increasing pain. This can lead to a loss of fine motor skills, which can make even getting your jacket back on a very difficult task. As the days went by, leaves were falling and the temperatures dropped. We realized that we had to plan accordingly in order to prevent our bodies from cooling down too much after getting out of the water. We were aware that soon it would be difficult to dry off and get our clothes back on as quickly as possible when we wouldn't feel our hands and feet anymore. We suddenly sensed that this winter something would be different than the years that had passed. For the past 10 years, I would say, we rarely experienced any snow in winter. And to be honest, when I started out this project, I wasn't really expecting to see any ice at all. But this year, everything was going to be different. By now, the lush golden leaves had fallen, and the colorful, picturesque landscape was replaced by a grey canvas, with trees reminding of skeletons. We saw less and less birds on the water, and the sun became a rare guest we were not fortunate to see very often anymore. Slowly, autumn turned into winter, but neither of us expected what we were about to witness. we suddenly found ourselves in a real fight against our inner boundaries. I had never experienced something like this. But let me say, if you are able to really concentrate on your senses in these harsh conditions, while keeping a calm way of breathing and maybe even relax in the icy water, it is one experience of a kind. It almost feels like you are becoming one with the water and everything that surrounds you. It feels like you become one with nature. We had one brave soul among us who would always sacrifice himself to go into the water first to break the ice in order for everybody else to go in safely. If you have never done anything like this, you might not be thinking about it, but water can cut your skin. Many of us had to learn this the hard way, and even though we were careful, it happened again and again. We had to assess risk each time all over again. We could either take it slow, not to get hurt or anything, or go in quickly to reduce the time your body is exposed to the freezing temperatures. In the end, nobody was prepared for what was coming. We all experienced something we had not seen for years. It was just amazing. It felt like jumping back into your childhood. Sledging, snowball fights, ice skating. It almost felt like we had been traveling back in time. And after all these experiences, I can proudly say that this was the best winter I've ever experienced. There was one day when I came up with another idea for this film, and this was to go and take an ice bath, but at night. I think some people first thought I was crazy when I mentioned that idea, but they would suddenly come to realize that I was serious about it. I remember Phill being totally with me from the beginning, so after a couple of thoughts later, it was clear that we had to make this reality, and I began planning. We knew that an ice bath at night would demand the greatest deal of us all, because it would be dark, even colder, and also just a mental battle on another level. So we had to plan appropriately. And so we organized a virtual meeting to go through everything in detail and to rule out as many imponderables as possible.
Weil wir versuchen wollen, das so schnell es geht irgendwie hinter uns zu bringen.
Marcus had helped me in advance to make a plan for a certain sequence that people would follow in order to make this experience as pleasant as possible for everybody involved, if you can say that. And Sarah even doodled some sketches to help everybody understand it better. We checked the weather forecast every day to see whether it would snow, if it would maybe be too cold, and first and foremost because on that particular weekend it was set to be windy as f. So on Saturday, when we would take our usual ice bath and everybody was there to prep the sequence for the next day, we suddenly realized that we had to change plans. It would just be too stormy on the next day. We threw over all our plans and went back home to prepare for the night. I was really stressed out because I was worried so much that we had to abort the mission in that moment we entered the water. And I was praying to the god of winds to grant us a short time frame without too much wind while we were filming. We had practiced the sequence dry in our heads on the spot, but I had just one thought in my mind. Please, God, please, let everything work. And then, night came crawling. After all these days, all these experiences with the most beautiful souls, there was just one thing left to do. To put all of this in an unforgettable memory that everybody of us can rewatch whenever they like. gave it all I had for this film. Everybody did. I gathered film material over a period of 5 months, resulting in a total of over 300 gigabytes of footage. I contacted well-known musicians for licensing agreements and searched the web for hours to find the right music for this project, most of which we had already been listening to during our ice bathing sessions. I honestly feel so overwhelmed by the support we received from people from all over the world to make this project come to life in the particular way I envisioned it to do along the journey. And to each and everyone who was involved in the making of this film, I want to say the following. All of this wouldn't have been possible without you. To the people, to the artists, the supporters, and everybody I was in contact with, a deep thank you. This opportunity shaped the winter of 2020 and 21 into an unforgettable memory I will still be thinking of when I am old, and so will we all. To my friends, it was such a blessing to share this experience with all of you, and I am so grateful from the bottom of my heart for each and every one of you and your existence. Because in times like these, where some of us, just like myself, are struggling with deeper issues, a friendship like ours is just one of a kind. It is such an amazing feeling to stand there in the cold water, exposed to the elements, and to become one with all that surrounds you, all that is, while still knowing you're not alone, and after all, you will never be.
sonnig und warm. Wir warten heute heiß nach 20 Grad, zum Glück sind wir im Wasser und können so ein bisschen abkühlen. Freuen wir schon drauf.